until now, we've been leading up to it and developing some foundation. So, to lead into that, I'd like to know, how many of you travel quite often? Do you travel a lot, Carol? Francine? How about you, when you go into a new city you haven't been to, you probably haven't been to very many you haven't been to before, but when you go into a new one and you rent a car, what is the first thing you usually get when you pick up your car?
A map.
A map. And what do you use a map for?
Well, I like to have an idea of what the city is shaped like so I know where I'm going.
Okay, so
I
you
can
find,
visualize it.
and you usually have a place you've got to find, so you can go stay in your motel and again find your place, your company you're going to be working with. Well, we're going to be doing the same thing in trying to write. We want to have a map in writing the proposal. If you don't, you have total chaos. If I were to give each one of you a section of the map of the proposal to write, and I didn't give you a road map to follow, we would have a disjointed. You could all write the section you wanted to write, but you would have it in one format, you'd have it in another one, you'd have it in another one, you'd have it in another one. So what we want to do is we want to start with a road map. And basically I have it over here on the wall, a six-step section writing, and it's planning and organizing, developing strategy and content, visualizing the section, a mock-up and a draft, and then finally we'll revise it. Now right here is when we first start doing the writing. So we're going to still do a lot of preparation to get there. And I'm going to take you just part of the way down in this particular section. But let me just read a couple of things here. Writing starts in the head, not on paper. We've got to think about what we're going to do first. Writing requires a carefully planned blueprint or a roadmap to organize a proposal at every level, from overall proposal down to each paragraph. And so that's where we're going to lead to. Proposal writing must be controlled writing to ensure that we have RFP compliance. We have to answer what they're asking us for. And remember, our objective is to create an easy to evaluate document, not necessarily a logical document. If they didn't put it to us logically in their RFP, we're going to probably give it back to them the same way so that they can follow it. So if we look at our first stage or first step, planning and organizing, what do we have to do? What is the thing that would be, when you go to your road map, when you're going to a new city, you look at it and you say, okay, I've got to get from here, the airport, to there. You look and say, find out which is the best way. You might even ask somebody which is the best route going to where you're going. And we have what we call a compliance checklist that we want to use to get us where we're going. Would you take out your handout 7-1? It's called Vaults of Stay Aloft and Air of Flight. And in it we have some excerpts from an RFP. RFPs usually go from maybe that thick to that thick. And all of the RFPs are basically set up the same way. They're governed by regulation that they will be done the same way each time. And in that RFP, we have certain sections. A and B are kind of housekeeping type things, telling you what they're going to do. I guess this is the form that they fill out. This is RFP such and such. C is usually the statement of work or the specs. D, E, F. This is housekeeping. E and F are test and acceptance. And this is quality. Let's see, I guess I ought to write it so you can read it. And we go down here to section L and section M. The rest of the sections in between are housekeeping ones again. They're contracts, people might want to look at them or so forth. But L tells you what they want done, how they want the proposal formatted, and what they want in it. So this is, what is the title of section L? Do you recall?
Instructions to offers.
Instructions to offers. And section M is evaluation criteria. Usually these match each other, but if they don't, we want to make sure that we find out, get clarification from the customer to make sure they do. Now, if you on your second page, you have NASA RFP excerpts. And we have section L, which tells the software requirement, what they want, and section C36, which is a statement of work that supports section L. And what I'd like you to do is to read, this section L tells us to do something, and a compliance matrix has been done to match this. I'd like you to read this paragraph and look and see how they translate it into a compliance matrix. And this is not necessarily the absolute way you do it, but what it's done is they've stripped out of this paragraph every action that they expect us to do. By the same token, on paragraph C, they have stripped out every action that they've expected us to do. So I'd like you to take about 5 minutes and see if you find any others that they've left out or if they've covered everything. Anyone have any questions about that, whether or not what I actually want you to really do? Compliance list is quite a bit longer than the little paragraph we read. Did you also notice that they have either complex requirement, you might have one sentence that has about 3 or 4 requirements in, nested requirements and so forth. So what this is a very important thing for us to do. We have to break out every single requirement, because if we don't respond to, let's just take this sentence that says, there was 1, 2, 3, about 5 lines down. It says an interface with WP software elements and interface with SSE, taverns, and any other. So we've got interface with SSE, that's one requirement. Interface with taverns is another one. And the third one is interface with any other software support activities. So we've got 3 requirements right there. And if we're not responsive to each one of them, they could throw our whole proposal out. Now, can anyone see a problem with that and any other software support activities?
It's vague.
Very vague. I think that's a candidate for a question clarification, because they could throw the world at you that you have to be compatible with. And so you want to make sure that if it's not, if you can't meet it because it's so vague, you need to get it clarified.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Considering how clearly and carefully we've listed all these out here, to understand, get a clear understanding of what they want, considering how they wrote this, do they have as clear an understanding of what they want? Because they tend to lump a lot of things together and say things vaguely.
Many times they're just as vague as, they have given you as clarification as close as they can give it to you. And in other words, they don't know what they want
And
sometimes.
it's still like this.
And it'll still be like that. But the other thing is, the evaluator that is going to be evaluating your proposal, or your section that you're going to be writing, will also basically do the same thing.
Oh,
The guy that evaluates it may not be the one that writes it.
oh, I see.
And somebody will have to, set up a standard to judge your proposal, or our proposal, plus somebody else's proposal against it.
Mhm.
So he's probably having the same trouble. And the evaluator team might go back to the offerer and say, hey, you can't, this is too vague, you can't do this. And so they'll come out with a clarification maybe before we even ask.
Mhm.
But we need to ask on that one item. So, if you'll notice, they did have paragraph L and paragraph C separated. Now, instructions, I guess it's not, to the offerers, or to the contractors, they're asking us, or they're telling us exactly what they want. Now, C is in the statement of work up here. And in this instructions, they'll say, we want this plus whatever is in there. And so you have to respond to both of them. But normally what you do is you take whatever, they want this plus what's in C. And in C then, you might want to take the C items and incorporate them up into here. In other words, this is what they expect to see in your section of the write-up. But these yet are further breakouts of them, so we want to put those up in there. So, any questions about that? Now what we want to do is we have an ultralight RFP. This is just the section L and the section C out of the ultralight RFP, request for proposal. What I'd like you to do is read paragraph on performance, paragraph B, and read it and see if you can do the same thing we did with the one that we just looked through. Now when you get through with L, what I would like you to do on the C section is just to the left of the border here. I would like you to tell me where this would be covered up in the sections you identify up here. But before we do that, let's do this, and then after we get that done, let me know what you, let's all agree that we're going to start with the same sections, headings together. So take another 4 or 5 minutes and do that assignment. Need a pencil?
There's always one, you know.
Like whatever she gives me.
Oh, well, the highest speed. Yeah, the top speed has to be the
Oh, yeah,
highest.
yeah, yeah, okay.
They obviously don't reread these when they write it.
Yeah. So you don't need to do the C ones. Oh, you're already
Oh, I
putting
had
these
to.
over underneath
Yeah.
those? Okay. Marie.
Very, yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this method, but once somebody I know worked on a proposal
Mhm.
told me that as they did compliance matrices, they used, what was it, green and red or something to that effect, that as they went through, they would underline everything in black, green and red, and things that they could do well, they would highlight in green, or like put a green dot here or something like that. And
You
those
mean that they
had-
could respond to?
Easily,
that
yeah.
we
Those
were
that would
good
be
at?
trouble factors, they would
Put
use
them in
red, yeah, or red underlining or something like that. I thought that was interesting.
Because we would flag those right away.
Yeah, because, you know, sometimes you'll read through that section L normally can be 25 pages, or it can be 10 pages, or 5 pages, or whatever. And usually, if you should have your own key, you know, if you go through it and mark it, like with a yellow marker or something, for those items that you know stand out and hit you right in the face as a requirement, then the next time you read it through, you won't be looking for those same ones, because you've already done that, and then maybe you'd look for them a different way too. Okay, we all there? Okay, I should have given you just a little bit more information. Well, no, let's see what we've got. Let's see what we've got before I make that comment. Here's my pages here. There we go. Okay, now we're looking for action verbs and telling us to do something. So, Carol, tell us let's see, how will we do this? Well, tell me how many sections, first of all, you have in your breakout. Did you break them up by sections? Did anyone break them up by sections? Okay.
I've got,
Francine, tell me what you have.
well, I've got 4 sections with a bulleted list under one of them.
And you have a more detailed list under which one?
The last one.
The last one, okay, so you
With all
have
the
4.1,
factors.
4.2.
Well, yeah, I had numbered them, but
I've got 4 sections.
Okay, that's
I
okay.
have
We'll
most.
just look at it. Tell me what your first section is.
describe performance capabilities with special reference to the factors described in C3.2, statement of work.
Performance.
Capabilities. And I just had it summarized as CF, period, factors. I just sort of wrote it down in a code that I
Okay.
gave me.
Does everyone have that as their first one? Okay. How about your second one then, Carol?
Meet all minimal requirements.
Well, you have an emergency.
Okay. Do you have that one for your second one also?
Well, I have
That's
meet
it?
all performance requirements.
Okay.
It sounds as if you've got to meet all of them anyway, minimal or maximum.
Okay, Kathy? Did you get basically the first two also?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Kathy, why don't you tell me what you got for number 3?
I had, describe how our performance claims are substantiated with verifiable performance data, etc.
Performance claims. Verified with what?
Verified with, or substantiated with verifiable performance data from actual flight or field testing or wind tunnel or equivalent laboratory studies.
Okay. Now, what about the next one? Do you have those same ones?
Mhm.
Okay, now number 4, what does it want you to do?
Well, I said focus discussion, but whatever you want to say, emphasize, what?
Following major factors.
Emphasize the following areas, performance areas.
Side, emphasize. How you spell it?
CE.
Okay. And they are,
Et cetera, et cetera. Flight control, aero stability, glider capabilities, noise muffling, adaptability, et cetera.
flight control and handling. If I just title that flight control, would that be okay? Do you think?
Well, no, you should be as detailed as they
Okay.
are.
What you really, you know, when the evaluator looks at this thing, they're going to be looking for the same words that we're seeing. So if we just call it flight control, and then when we wrote up the paragraph, and we put flight control and handling in it, he may not even look in that paragraph because he can't find the handling paragraph.
You may forget to put it in.
And we may forget to put it in if you just say flight control. Okay, and then I guess, well, let's just list these others here for a minute. Aerodynamic. Why don't I do this? Let me, I want to put a slide up for you for a minute and ask you a question. Where's a good place to set it? Let's see, focus. How do I focus it? Oh, I did it. Sorry for being out over the side of it. Does this do the same thing you came up with? We've got I've just arbitrarily numbered at 5. I've got flight control / handling. That probably should say and handling, so it looks just the same. Aerodynamics, what did they say? Aerodynamic stability, I think we should have had. Glider capability, noise muffling, and adaptability. Now I've got one section with 5 subsets in it, and you've got these 5 subsets in it. Which way would be the best? Or would we make any difference?
Well, you have a picture of the breakdown on the slide.
Well, if I could put this on a picture too, but how do you describe performance capabilities Why these performance capabilities?
I guess.
Flight control handling, aerodynamics, noise muffling.
They mentioned a number of others though.
Okay, that's all those that are down in C, aren't they? They're all down in C.
I don't know, I didn't look to see if any of them crossed over. but
Well,
there may be some.
what we need to do is we need to make sure, the next exercise that we're going to do is we're going to, once we decide on how we want to put it this way or some other way, then we're going to go down to the left-hand side of this and list where we think, let's look at 3.2.16, have positive and neutral stability. Where would that go? It'd go in this aerodynamic stability, wouldn't it? So that'd be a paragraph or a subparagraph that we would want to make sure we put in here.
So would you sort all the criteria into categories they logically belong to rather than having an endless list?
Mm-hmm. So that, for two reasons. One, it's readable, and it's a little bit logical too, to do it that way. Otherwise, you'd have a humongous section, maybe.
What I would do is I would take one and describe all the performance capabilities, and I'd weave those 5 points in one, I think.
Then what would you do with two?
What would you do with two?
Yeah.
Meet them in one.
Okay.
If everything comes together.
And what would you
in
do
one.
with three?
Are you saying that they're all?
What I guess I'm saying is that performance has these 5 subsets, the last paragraph, and then this describe performance capabilities. You're going to describe them in here, and in here, and in here. Yeah. So that's kind of an overall 5, a general statement. Anybody have problems with that?
Well, do those 5 encompass all of these? I haven't studied it enough to
Well,
know that, but will
now,
they?
there might be 1 or 2 in C that wouldn't fit very good in any one of these. But these are all performance capabilities too, though, see? So they're all performance, but if there's something that doesn't fit up in there, you could probably add it right in here. 'Cause, see, if you're looking at your paragraph, you have 5.0, and you call it performance. And then if you write, you usually would have some kind of an introduction in here, and then you might even have a paragraph that covers something that's down in section C that doesn't fit in there. Or would you put another section?
That's what I thought of. I guess it depends what kind of criterion it is. Is it parallel to the other, and I'd add a 6th one? Or does it sort of umbrella the others in some way? I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you might have to have a 1
Well,
or 2.
You want to be careful about that, because what they're really looking for is they're trying to look at and they might have the 6th one.
Of course, under glider capability, you could fit a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So then down here in 5.1, you would put the next flight control and handling, and then you might have a 5.1 1 that is going to be, how you make it fly and so forth. So I guess what I'm saying is maybe we just do performance. And if one of those down in C, in fact, why don't we do that exercise now? Let's look at the C, and don't take time writing it, but just let's use the 5.0 and the 5 items there, and see if you can bracket and put like C321 in one of those 5, and where you can't, let's just call it 5.0. Let's see how many we do get up in 5.0. I'll move that over so you
Why
can
don't
see
you
it
erase
better.
that? Carrying on the pilot. Let's
Would that be flight control? That's the only one I can imagine.
Which one, for the first one?
see.
If I had to squeeze it into one of them.
Will those be overall specs? Maybe that's just a kind of a spec thing.
Yeah, these are the specs.
Yeah, but I mean, as you describe the widget, as you describe the aircraft, would you have one section that just said, it will do this, it will be X feet long, it will hold people of not more than, I don't know. Maybe it's not performance. Is that, maybe that's not a performance.
Well, it's listed in their C section as performance. The ultralight aircraft shall carry one pilot and passenger.
They haven't done their thinking, obviously. This is an RFP after all.
It's the RFPs.
Do you know how fast they put these RFPs together? Probably just as fast as we get, as we have, or the same amount of time that we have to respond to them sometimes. Like they give you an RFP and say we want a response in 45 days. And that might be how long it took them to put their RFP together. And sometimes they just pull this section out of one of them, and this out of another one, and this out of another one.
Of course,
They-
our
It's
proposal
glider
can't be like that.
capability. Let's do another glider capability.
Which one?
The weight, the carry one passenger, it's capable of carrying one passenger.
Well, is that glider capability? Yeah. I thought glider
Why
capability was
don't,
the
why don't,
ability
why
to
don't you just
glide.
all go through them and put it where you think you're going to go, and then we'll just
Just not
have,
get stuck on the first one?
yeah. After you get them done, what we'll do is we'll put them up here and see where they fall, and then maybe we'll have one or two we'll have to negotiate.
Looks as if section L listed some of these as is.
They may have.
And
So
then
that's where
section
they,
C
so-
listed some of them and then some others too.
right, that's right. So section C is really the details of the specs, you know, exactly the things that it has to do. Well, let's just start. Carol, why don't you just give us your, the ones you have in 5.1.
5.1,
C3, they're all 3, 2, 1. Let's just give me the
14, 15.
14, 15.
So
Okay. Do you have any others in
Oh,
Five,
yeah,
one?
tentatively.
Okay,
5, 6, 7.
5, 6, 7.
Plus
Others?
the other two.
Plus the other two?
One of them. Oh, sorry, 15.
15. Okay,
And 16, sorry.
and 16. Okay. Have you got yours done yet, Kathy?
Some of them I just didn't know where they went.
Okay, why don't you give me what you've got up in here, and let's see if we've got anything that are the same.
On 5-1, I had 5, 6, 7, 8, and I had 11 and 12 too.
Okay, how about 5, 2? Carol?
16,
Okay,
maybe 18.
okay.
I have 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 14. That's it.
Okay, Kathy?
I had 14, 16,
That it? Okay, how about ladder capability, 5, 3, Carol?
1 through 13.
Okay,
18.
you have 18, what do you have?
It sure would help to know what each of these things means.
Oh,
Wouldn't that be important? Well, we can see.
I had 18 too.
Okay. At least two of you are in the same wavelength. Carol, what
Maybe
about
wavelength
noise
of
muffler?
ignorance.
I think we're confused.
19.
Okay, any others?
19.
Wow,
19,
we've got agreement, adaptability. Carol?
20, and maybe 18.
And
I had 13 and 20.
Okay.
I had the same.
13 and 20?
Uh-huh.
Okay, you know, it's difficult. Now, let me ask you this, could any of those
Yeah, that's true.
that we don't have agreement on fit up in 5-0?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I had 13 and 12.
Where?
Excuse me,
Where'd
13
you-
and 12.
Down here?
Uh-huh. That's 5, 5.
Okay, where'd you have 20?
20 also. I'm sorry,
And 20
I've
also.
forgotten.
Okay, did any of you have anything up here? Is it
Well, I had a lot of,
question marks?
well, yeah, I wasn't sure if they fit under those or not, so
Yeah.
I assigned them because I couldn't quite eliminate them from those categories. It wasn't that clear to me.
Yeah. Okay, you can see from this that we had trouble, every one of us had trouble putting them in a category. Now, I don't think you want to add more categories because these first three things that you had listed up, they were kind of general. You know, you want to meet the requirements, that's really broad. Or you want to meet the performance capabilities, that's really broad. So that, you know, what you'd say up in here, you say 5.0, our system meets the, you know, that's motherhood. You can say those motherhood statements up there, and then you say the details of how they do that. But some of these, if they don't fit down here anywhere, we could probably logically state them up here somewhere or other. Or we could make them fit down in here somewhere. Now why, let's see, with 5, 6, 7, where'd you have 5, 6, didn't you have them somewhere?
And one, I had.
Oh, you had them all down here, glider capability,
Except I agreed that the temperature ones could go to 5,
to 5.0,
to 5.5.
adaptability, temperature
I
was
think it
that?
may be however we see our strengths, we can put them in the categories where they would best represent our strengths.
Normally, by the way, you'd get these compliance matrix from your proposal manager. He would do this gyration so that you as writers would not have to do it. You would be told that you want to, you're going to write section 5 and you will put one of these in a specific place. And then you would justify it in your writing. Let's see, question. What would you do with this?
I think the main point here is assign it somewhere and tell them where it is
Yeah.
and get on with it.
And see what's going to happen on that compliance matrix or compliance requirements. Once we've identified these compliance requirements, the way we have them, we're going to put another column over here, and we're going to change the title to response matrix. So we're going to say that number 1 is found in section 5.1, and number 2 is going to be found in section 5.4. Number 3 is going to be found in section 5.5. So it doesn't really make that big a difference, like he says. Put it in one and get on with it. And probably your choice of where you put them is maybe just as good as anybody else's.
As long as you tell them where they're going to find the answer.
As long as you give them the roadmap. See, this compliance matrix is a roadmap, a compliance list is a roadmap for us to follow to do 2 things. To write the proposal and to make sure that we have responded. Let me back up. It's to do 2 things. It's to sell us to the customer and to make sure that we've covered every request. The response matrix, which is the column that's over here, is made up of this compliance checklist plus where we put it. That's the customer's roadmap to find out where it is. And so with that, we're going to end this section and we will go have a break and we'll proceed to doing we'll get down to the next step, which is developing strategy, and right on down to the writing. And it took longer than I thought it would take.
Okay.
This is your typical proposal team, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Lost.
Okay, good.
Do you want to start with you?
Let's go through.
I gotta go.
Why don't you give him your comments first and then take off? How's that? Any
Yeah,
comments
that's
you
fine.
have?
Go ahead and get the comments, yeah.
I thought you did a very good job, and I learned a lot. I really haven't had a lot of experience with proposals, but I've input a lot of them.
Mhm.
And we responded to a large RFP a while ago, and I had heard some feedback that we hadn't answered what they had asked us to answer, and it was interesting. And I learned a lot, and I thought you did a fine job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thanks, Tony. It's good to see somebody that hasn't ever seen it all.
Yes.
And she understood what you were doing.
But now she probably really understood what that
It
comment
probably helps her understand why we weren't responsive in some areas
Mhm.
on the proposals you just made.
Mhm.
It's because somebody, maybe a group of people, didn't do their job in doing a good job getting all the requirements out of it.
And that's what you call stripping?
Yeah, it's what you call stripping. And
It sounds like when during a math test, when you have a story problem and you're rewriting it in equations, so you know where the x's and the y's are
that's exactly
and
what it is.
how to solve it, so you get a clear picture of what's involved.
And if
That's
you-
what I felt as if I was doing.
If you think that these are simple, these come right out and hit you in the face. But there's others I've read that you just literally cannot get. It is like a math problem when you're trying to understand what's the problem, what do they really want us to give them? You don't know.
We were trying to write formulas rather than
Yeah.
blurb this awful stuff that they do.
That's right. And they couldn't. Those math people couldn't write any better than these could they?
I think that you have a nice natural style and that you probably enjoy teaching. And that I think is going to stand you in good stead doing this program. The only hesitation I have is I think is you need to assimilate this material. I know that it's a question of being very familiar with the material, assimilating it into your own style and
Yeah.
words and what you want to say about it, and then, spitting it back up to the
Mhm.
participants. So I think that's kind of, in a couple of sections where you start off in one direction, then you rethink it, and then you go in another direction. I think that's just largely due to not being familiar with the material. One other comment I would add is to when you're stuck or in those situations, you might ask more questions. You were trying to lead us a little bit too much, I thought, perhaps where you could ask
Yes.
some open-ended questions and get people to take you there, or take the class there.
Or maybe also, if I can build on what you're saying, explain why you decided to change direction. For example, when you were doing something and you said, well, we won't do this now. Well, no, let's do it. And I thought, why?
Yeah.
And if you might have said, let's do it because that will really clarify for you, and then I know why I'm doing it.
Yeah, okay.
It's not arbitrary.
That's right. After we did that exercise, I thought, now why are we doing this? And then I thought, oh, it really does prove a point. It proves a couple of points.
And I should have told you why I was doing that. Yeah, okay.
Okay, well, my comments, LeRoy, I thought the map was an excellent analogy, and it got me interested right away. I bought off on what you were going to say about why you have this in the first place, compliance checklist. I liked how you listed on the board the major components of the RFP. I'd never seen it listed that way. I've usually seen the whole list, and then have it pointed out, well, remember C and F and L and M, and those are the most important. But I like the way you didn't put A and B and everything between. And so all I had was the ones that really stood out, and I thought, oh, I'll remember the important ones much more easily, because those are the only ones that are named. So I like that emphasis taken.
You know, if you don't do that, the first time they gave me an RFP, they said, review this, and we're going to have a meeting tomorrow. And so what do? You start reading A, and then you look at B.
Exactly.
And B's got a lot of deliverable information in it. It's not needed at this point in time. It's needed just before you ship it out the door, the proposal out the door, to make sure you're shipping the equipment and charging it to the right account number and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I just wish I could get my hands on the people who write those RFPs, because we teach writing.
Yeah.
And we teach, how can you write your material to make it easy for readers to use it? And it's just like, no.
They're engineers, like in the section we had
The order
yesterday.
is so arbitrary.
Well, yeah, they're all different types.
They're all different types, yeah.
So they're not writing in a coherent way. So anyway, I liked how you separated that out, and maybe you might want to say what you just said right now to them. Now, this is why I'm separating those out to you, so that you don't go home and read it in sequence, because you don't have any other guideline for how to read this.
Mhm.
Read the rest of those later, focus on these. I thought that you have a nice pace of speech. It wasn't too slow and it wasn't too fast. I thought the pace occasionally slowed, the pace of the overall section, but that was for the same
would come with
reason.
familiarity.
Yes, and that was very clear to me, that once you felt comfortable with exactly how and why you're running an exercise, you'd be able to do it comfortably. So I just suggested rehearse a little bit more. Anticipate in your mind where people might have questions, where they might not be clear, where you could run into a problem so you're not running into it as you teach it. Good eye contact and connection with us. I like how you debriefed, asking each one of us in turn for one item, so we were all involved, and yet we weren't any of us really on the spot. I thought that you made the concepts very clear. I had the feeling that you had a very clear idea of what you were talking about, at least conceptually. Again, the mechanics of delivering it will come with practice. My one major suggestion is to preview, when you begin, what we're going to do during this section. Because the roadmap was an excellent hook and introduction. If I'd had an overview of, well, we're going to cover this concept and do this kind of exercise to show that, and then we'll do this and that, I think I would have not been wondering, well, why are we doing this? What are we going to do next? And I would have liked an overview, a preview at the beginning. But that's all.
That's a good idea.
I agree with Kathy and Carol that you're obviously comfortable teaching and that you did a really good job. It was nice to see.
I think the preview was there for the major overview. The preview was there, and it was a good wrap-up.
But for this particular
And a good
section, it
wrap-up.
was not.
No, even for this section, the general introduction and overview of what we were going to do today, and then you summarized it and capped it up nicely. I think maybe you mean in each activity.
Oh, yes.
The
Well,
little
we
preview.
were doing several exercises, and I was never sure what we were going to do next. And so I wasn't making the connections as easily.
I need transition from, okay,
Yeah.
first of all, we want to,
Yes.
we're going to take a section of an RFP and we're going to strip it out, and we're going to
Right.
group it into some workable sections. And then after we get through that, they say, okay, now this one's been done for us, and we want to just verify how they got it out. Once we've done that, then we'll go on to the next one where we're gonna strip it out.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
not
but-
in great detail, just enough so that I can see basically where I'm going,
Mhm.
that's all.
Yeah, the confusion there was, we talk about, you know, the old Dave Pugh's instructional design. Tell, show, do, you know,
Hmm.
that's it.
I forgot to tell.
And you didn't tell them what a compliance checklist was, so it was sort of like it's a verb, and this tells you what you're gonna do. Start out with a verb, so you didn't tell them, then you showed them,
Mhm.
And
but
so
it
they
got
a little lost,
confused.
yeah.
Yeah, it all
Because you
came
started
together.
you started to talk about organizing in the middle of it, and you wanna keep the organizing out and just say, strip it, this is, and so the compliance checklist and compliance matrix, towards the end, you crept back into calling it a matrix instead of a checklist,
Mhm.
which implies now you're referencing it to something else. So there's a terminology
Mhm.
thing that contributes to some of the confusion.
Yeah, well, the
That's
reason
what-
why is because we always refer to it as a compliance matrix, which is really your response matrix.
Yes.
Now,
Which is now
there's
when it's
another
time-
term
Don't be
here,
confused.
which is a
That's true.
compliance checklist.
First
And-
step,
And that's
yeah.
the first step of making the matrix.
Yeah, you need to keep
As
those
long as we
separate, or
know.
they get confused.
Yeah.
I liked your opening on the roadmap. I think where I got some confusion, or I thought there may have been some, was when you talked about a roadmap and then you outlined the 6-step writing process. I thought, okay, that's the roadmap. This is how we're going to write a section.
But we didn't.
But then later on, you talked a roadmap, and you started talking about a response matrix or compliance matrix as the roadmap, because it's going to tell you what's there. And I said, now which, the roadmap analogy, I was confused now. Were you talking about telling them what had to do and where to find it as the roadmap, or was this the roadmap? Because that's what you
Really,
opened with.
really, there's,
Did you get that?
I think
And I didn't notice.
There were
No,
two
but I just
two
thought-
uses.
if I used it two different ways, it's
Yeah, you
correct,
did.
but you can use your compliance list as a map of what we're gonna give them.
Oh, I agree. I'm just
Okay.
saying, when you use roadmap and you use two different
Yes.
examples, then it starts, oh, wait a
Then
minute, which
people
one
can
was
be
it?
Don't use
confused
it,
now, which
okay.
one are you talking about? That's true.
Okay, but then I said, okay, now then you can use the roadmap, another roadmap as your response matrix, and it probably, it didn't come through then, okay.
Yeah. And on another plus, on, I think it was the second exercise they were down here, you get confused on the directions, and then you recovered so well, it wasn't noticeable. And you weren't flustered or anything else, and I think that's really critical when you get up there, because you're going to get confused, and that's going to happen, and if you can react like that on your feet, that's great, instead of losing it, you know, and it's easy.
Yeah.
So, and the eye contact, you were looking at the people, and you walked around, and the gestures were good, too, again. You were talking about large, you know, RP and big gestures and that kind of stuff, and that was good. You know, and there was a variety. Andy was the classic. He had one gesture, and he kept going like this. And it was
Good
one
gesture,
set,
but
you know, and you had a whole variety, and they're natural, so that's good. I guess, and I've caught myself doing it, but when you said something about, I'm going to read some points here, that's usually, uh-oh.
Sleep time. huh?
There's only a few people that can do that. Larry Best can do it. He can read a phone book, I think, and make it kind of sound interesting. I can't. No way. If I start reading it, you know, I've got about 15 seconds and they're gone, you know, so don't read.
that's a good
Unless
point.
the participants follow it. What if they follow?
Even so,
Yeah.
You could point it out, but I wouldn't say I'm going to read it, even if you do read
Yeah,
it.
right, I agree.
Okay.
you've got to know it so well that you can be reading it while you're looking at us and bringing it to life. I
Or
find
even
it-
if you said, but I wouldn't say I'm going to read it for
Right.
points. That's my
I want
suggestion.
to say, let's look at these
Turn
few
your page
points and they
down
don't
so-
know
Yeah.
that you're actually reading, but it's got to sound like yours
Yes.
Mhm.
rather than da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah,
So
I
you
agree.
build even more tone into those than
Mhm.
into anything else you're saying.
Mhm. And after the first one in particular, when you said I'm going to read, and then you read one, but then you stopped and you talked about some things and you threw your own in and made it your own, and that was good, but then you went back and read 3. So you got to be, I've caught myself doing it, and because I watched in my first workshop Larry Best. Like I say, he can read so well and so interestingly that he can get away with it. But I couldn't, you know, and that wasn't a good model
It's
for me
hard
to
to
see.
do.
Yeah.
I agree. And no matter how good a reader you are, you stumble for some reason or other when you're reading.
Yeah. One of the things here too, in the beginning, when you start in a compliance checklist, an easy way to get a little more interactivity would have been come back and ask them, have you ever made one of these things? Have you ever seen one? And draw them in a little bit, because you had no idea what these people had done or not.
Mhm.
So what did they know? Because you had a long period up there with nothing going on between them, so you can find out and see. And if you find there's a real leader in here or somebody who's done it, you can go to them a little more. And if you get tired or if you get confused or you're tongue-tied, say, now how did you do it? And let them do it. And get it off your back.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
To go do my weekly report, so I have to
Okay.
excuse myself.
Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
Are you coming back on Monday, or?
I think
Yeah.
I'll probably come back on Monday just for
All right.
part of the day and then we'll
Okay,
finish it up.
see you then.
Okay,
Good job.
thank you.
Thanks,
Should
Carol.
should I probably go at this point too, since you're,
Well, we just got a couple more here.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
you'll have some comments to add to these.
Okay,
You
fine.
usually do, so I just assumed
No.
you were- You're the
you've been
facilitator
much
type.
more thorough than I am.
Uh,
I'm amazed.
After assigning the exercise, I'd come back, we talked about this before, and ask them, now what are you going to do? Because I
Oh,
think there
yeah,
was
I
some
forgot to do that.
confusion, and it would still help. You tend to try to keep it, you started to run them together, and you want to give them, okay, do this, give them a chance and come back and check with them.
Yeah.
Now, what are you going to do, Carol? That kind of thing. And ask them after the first exercise, now what did you notice about it? Because you kind of went back and gave them the answers. You said this is kind of convoluted, and you see how this goes. And ask
Ask
friends,
them,
what
let
did you
them.
notice about this? Why, what are the differences? And let them tell you. Again, you don't have to do it. Let them do it.
Mhm.
It's always better when they say it.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty obvious, and I was thinking, wow, this is pretty revealing, and I was dying to say,
Yes.
hey, I really am impressed with this and this and that. It gives us more chance to, especially when it's easy, because they're excited about it, which I assume they are in the
Mhm.
workshop.
And that way you
It's
don't,
very
yeah.
revealing then.
You don't have to pick words and you worry about whether I'm getting the right word. Let them do it.
Mhm. And it varies the pace.
Plus, it would
Medium.
also, if they don't come up with the right words, that might jog your memory what the right word is.
And we've talked before, be a little more definite in the language. We talked about making it black and white. Some of the people who do really well on these things are explicit black and white language. And it is kind of gray. But
Okay.
try to state some of these things. For example, when you're going, you never really said, organize by section L and fit the rest of it within. I mean, that's a very definite, do this. And you said, well, you might want to, kind of thing. And if you've got a techie out there who's done some of these, he's going to say, well,
I don't want
yeah,
to.
but I know better. I know, I'm going to do it by C because, and they'll go off doing their own thing because you really haven't hit them there. This is the way to do it. It's like that customer called up and says, send somebody off because I want to do it by C and straighten these guys out. And we of course, couldn't send anybody because it was wrong. But you've got to, there are some things that are very definite and you have to state them that way.
Yeah.
And then they don't have any confusion. You asked for some questions at one time, but there was, the pause again was so short, you
But
just
I
went
didn't
right
give them
on.
a chance to answer.
Nobody had a
I did that
chance.
yesterday.
Count.
That's
count.
hard.
Well,
What do
one
you
of
say,
my
how
colleagues
long?
was saying 4 seconds.
4.
1,000, 2,000. Paratroopers, when they jump out of the plane.
Yeah.
That's what I do mentally. I ask a question, I do it because otherwise I do that. I do that. Same thing. Well, what do you think? Well, the answer is.
Yeah. Good answer. Huh?
And the other, this is another, try to avoid walking in front of the view graph. You did it once because you went over there, and that's great to walk over, but you have a good opportunity in that sense to flip it off, walk over, you can flip it back on, you brought them back in, some of those things. But when it goes on your eyes, you feel kind of funny, and it looks strange, and it's sort of,
It's distracting. You could come around also, step around the table into the U and go around.
yeah, you go all the way around, but, flipping it off and on. Sid Jensen loves to do that. It's almost frantic the way he flips it off and on.
Really?
Somebody says boo, and he flips it off, yes?
Yeah.
Which is a good idea.
But it's a nice, regain attention
Even
thing
if
that
you're,
Jim
even
talked
if
about.
you're, if they're asking a question regarding the view graph, you still flips it off?
Oh, not regarding the view graph.
But
But here you wanted to go over and do something else.
Yeah.
And,
I was wondering, do we still need to be paying attention to that? Because the light and the noise and all that are distracting.
I know.
Yeah.
So unless you absolutely want their attention on it, turn it off.
Mhm.
Get the attention back onto you or whoever else is speaking.
this is just kind of a general one. On exercises, it's always a problem, at least I think in these workshops, is you gotta be real careful about giving them too much time on it. Callahan's wonderful at that. You talked about it one time about how he just drives them, I
Yeah.
mean, they never have a time to get anything done, and you're just feeling,
That's his philosophy. He says, never let them finish anything. And that really blew me away the first time. But now I teach that way. And what it does is it keeps people at peak mental performance, and they realize how much and how fast they can do in a very little time. It's really
After they do
good.
it a couple of times,
It just
then,
keeps them so alert rather than having them drift. It's much better than having them have too much time.
And then while they're doing it, like when you assigned the first compliance checklist there, that they were actually doing, it wasn't real clear you were supposed to do it, but you all just took off and did it. And you figured it out.
Well, I was really anxious to just get in
Yeah.
and do it. I thought I caught the drift pretty soon, and
Right.
I didn't need, what I needed was,
It could have been
as you
quicker
were
than
saying,
anything
do
because
this,
of that.
do that, okay, go.
So they were getting the concept quicker, and what you have to do then is you kind of watch that, and as soon as several people have the first, or 2/3 of them have the first one or two done, they come back and have, hey Carol, what did you have on the first one? Let's check it out, and you make sure everybody's there.
yeah, I
Because
thought
you
about
looked
that.
over here, and Marie didn't have anything on her paper. She had some of these.
Yeah,
I don't think she had an idea what she was doing. And so that way, somebody else, and it's non-threatening, I wouldn't ask her because it's blank. But I'd
Yes.
find somebody else that, that's safe, and have them read one, and some of these other people will get into it. And then you want to come back over to the individual like this, and say, did you get that, and check with those one-on-one, that kind of thing. But you pull some others back in and try to catch them up. But I found if I didn't watch them, I was telling the other day, they'd sit down there and they'd finish and they'd keep their eyes down like this, and you'd think they're still working. And they're not. They'll trick you every time. You gotta go
Skills
watch
they learn
them.
very early on in
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
Well, could also, it's probably a good idea to keep track in terms of if everyone has understood your instructions. If you should see if Marie
yeah,
isn't understanding, go out and say, oh, Marie, can I help you out?
yeah.
Anything you're confused about, so that you can catch up right away, and it's not at the end of the exercise that you realize that a third of the class didn't know what they were supposed to do.
Mhm.
And then on that last exercise, I thought they had it there, and you're going through, and I haven't done this, and I thought I could learn from this too. By the time you had a couple lines up there,
I should have
you
stopped
made the point.
and just said,
You could just simply say, look, intelligent people, all in different places. What does that tell you about, if we have all the writers strip it? That point was not as strong as it could have been.
Oh, yeah, I didn't get that point.
Yeah,
I was
I didn't.
wondering,
When everybody does it,
what
God,
do
it could
we
be
do now that
anything.
we're all different, we're all over the place, and we're all feeling stupid? What's the
What's the
point? What
point?
do we do about this? Yeah, I didn't realize that it was to show that only the manager should do that.
yeah,
Or if the writers do it, you gotta go back, check back and confirm, because what happens? Either 3 of you write on the same one, or we're writing different sections, or
Well,
nobody writes on it.
yeah, basically, I should have, after we did a couple of them, I should have said, this is a hard job,
Mhm.
and it's hard to find out and second guess what they really want and where they want it. So you do the best job you can, and normally a small group would do this, and maybe one guy would do it, and then 2 or 3 other guys would review it and replace it, and recommend replacement.
Yeah.
And then everybody plays to the same set of music then.
Okay.
And I should have said that, and
Yeah.
I didn't.
Well,
And that's a good analogy, same set of music, a symphony, or whatever, if you want to use that. If you're
that might
comfortable.
be good also, because same set of music takes away my worry that, well, what's the correct way?
Yeah.
And that doesn't matter.
There is
You
no
said
correct
that,
way. It's a
but
way that, whatever.
Just put them someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, I finally got around to that and said that, we will have one set where, we will tell them, the reader, how to find it, but we would like to put it where he's expecting to see it.
Remember the
And he-
85%
Yeah, and
story?
he was saying the other
Yeah.
day that an evaluator commented to a company and said, it's uncanny that you could put 85% of the responses were where we thought they would be. And so they know
were
it.
flabbergasted with 85% correct. That tells you where the rest are.
Yes. Well, see, I'm a little confused now. I thought that no matter how you think it would be logical to organize the information, you organize it in the order the RFP is.
By section L, not all these others.
Yeah, by section L. And so that's why we went through
Which
the
tells you how to
exercise
organize. See,
of
that's-
putting the C's into the L's.
I'm putting the season in. Okay.
So you
So
find
that didn't
yeah,
come across
the
either.
analogy I like to use is organize it, develop by L, and then all the other requirements you identify, you have to find a home for them somewhere within the
And
L.
I had that
Oh, what a
organization.
touching image. I visualize halfway houses for the one,
Yeah,
but you can't
yeah.
quite squeeze
Because
them
these
all.
orphans out there, you gotta
Yeah.
find a home for
Well,
them.
that's good,
Yeah.
that's excellent, that's,
Yeah.
'cause
Well, there's also-
that's how I'm realizing how all these C things, they're all over the place, would fit into L.
There's also
And
some,
you find them throughout the proposal. not just
there's
in
also
C.
some people that have some real specific ideas, like in Unisys, that we need to sell them more capability than they've asked for.
Mhm.
Oh, typical, yeah.
Now, if you're trying to do that, and you're just gonna give it to them at the same cost you would give them what they asked for, then you would make sure you put that information in a section, and you'd maybe even have a subsection. It'd probably go up in A, or up in 5, it wouldn't have a number on it,
Mhm.
but would have a bold set or a title on it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But normally you don't, you
Yeah.
try not, and this is one of the things that, the last proposal I worked on down there at Unisys, the guy, the engineer, had been talking so much with the engineer for the customer that he says, we've got to give them this, and Tosh and everybody else, I said, you don't give it to them because they haven't asked for it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And you're not going to price it up because they haven't asked for it.
Mhm.
Larry Best gave an interesting example about the RPMs on a car. What do you call that? The something-ometer?
Yeah,
Tachometer.
Tachometer.
His
How
daughter's
important
story,
to you?
yeah.
Yes, how important is it? Do you really need a tachometer? What do you use it for? So do you want to pay for it? And if that's an option,
Yeah.
it really is silly to sell that to somebody if they don't need it.
He does his features and benefits story because his daughter thinks it's wonderful in her Jeep.
To have
Tachometer.
Yeah, but she's got an automatic. And then he says, but Dad, it looks good. I'd have a big hole there without it. Is that a benefit to her? Sure.
clock.
She feels good. She feels good about it, it's a benefit to her, even though it's
Oh,
not
yeah,
an
I see.
engineering
I
benefit.
see.
So a nice feature benefit
Well,
analogy.
if you can fool the evaluators into thinking that it's a benefit to them anyway,
Mhm.
I better get back up.
Yeah,
But
the
thank
final,
you.
Thank you.
yeah, the final thing there when you finished, and I think you brought it out almost, is you usually want to ask if there are any questions, anything lingering, because you said you were kind of confused by the end about what the point was. And you might have asked that, I'm not sure if you would have. But you usually want to conclude
I just sort of
somehow to
started-
give them a chance, right?
Yes, yes, that's true. Pause and really ask. Really ask and hesitate, I mean, stop for 3-4 seconds every time, because that gives people the understanding from the beginning of the workshop that when you ask if there are questions, you mean it and you're going to give them time to think.
Mhm.
It's not just a rhetorical thing.
Would you
Any
come back
questions?
to
No?
them
Okay.
and say, now, what's the point of this? Why did we do this? Is that
Oh, that sounds
a
very
nice
good.
concluding thing so that they have to synthesize a little bit of what's going on and think about why did you do this
Yeah,
stuff?
if they come back with,
God, I don't know.
I'm
Then
not
you
sure.
can tell if they
Yeah.
have
Then you can
questions.
tell, and also you could tell if you got to review it a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's very good. And
Yeah.
it's always better to ask something like that than are there any questions, because the natural response is no. Do you understand?
No, I'm
Yes.
ready to leave.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And
Yes,
if I ask you a
that's-
question,
that's
all
a
these
cue.
people will be mad at me.
It's gonna cost me if I have questions.
That's right.
Yeah, I think the classic here too, though, I'm thinking of this thing from Rich, is too many times I felt like if I had them do all this work, and all these groups have done it, then I have to let them all report their findings.
Mhm.
But sometimes you've already got the point up here.
Mhm.
Now, what would you do? Would you cut it off and just keep it moving? Or would you let them have the honor of at least contributing what they did?
Oh, well, see,
Now, here
after
he- 'cause he
5.1 and
went around.
5.2, we've all contributed something.
If you could do it in that
And you
way.
can also see
Yes.
the confusion that's there.
Yes, the point is clear and we've all contributed. If you'd only asked 2 out of your 4 groups, for example, then that would have been a problem.
Yeah,
What I've
Because I
usually...
would say, well, wait a minute, maybe my answers don't support that.
Yeah.
yeah.
See, what I've usually done is said, okay, Carol, what do you have in 0, what do you have in 1, and I go down through hers, and then I go to the next one. This is better. If you do 5-1, then you don't have to do them all.
And then we're not tuning out,
Yeah,
because we know that
And
Carol's
it's
just going to
shorter.
go all the way down to 5.5. Yeah, it is shorter and the
yeah,
point's clear.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, yes, with exercises generally, at least in our writing courses, I'll do 1, 2, 3 maximum. of the exercises, just
Mhm.
enough so you have a feel that, they've got it. There's nothing more boring than going through 10 exercises, and that's kind of
Yeah.
a similar situation,
Let me
beating the dead horse.
try another one then. One of the things we often do, and you probably do something like this, let's say we have them write theme statements, or we have them write action captions for a visual or something like that. You like to get as many in, but again, it gets boring. When somebody reads one, it's hard for everybody to listen and pick apart, are there features or benefits, is it good side, what do they say, all those things. Now, the nicest thing I know is to pass out, transparency paper or plastic, and they write it down and you pop it on the view graph so you can read it. Flip chart's worse because it takes time to write and you can't have them on your desk. How do you do that? How do you get these up there? Because sometimes the easiest certainly is to have them read them, but there's a problem with that. And you don't have a workshop many times where you can take out, you know how we are with view graph paper around here. You want to
Yes.
take 25 sheets to every workshop and pass them out and have pins, and then they throw them, and then you've got another one to do, and
Well,
you see what I mean?
I'm not sure what the situation is because this isn't one of my workshops. I mean, not
But you have them
to
write
teach,
something.
But, and you want them to get feedback.
Yes, so you want to pop it up and see. And let
Well, in
the
one of your
critique.
workshops, if you gave them a writing assignment to write an action sentence, say, or
Yes.
something, and maybe there's 5 guys in a group, and each one of them write it, and then you get them together and you say, okay, now, all of those are pretty good, but would you get together and see if you can come up with one that you can basically agree is the best way you'd say that?
Well, good luck.
Yeah, I know.
But, yeah, that's a
But
good
then-
thing to do.
And so rather than, and so this guy, they come up with it, and like he's saying, if you go to group 1 and he reads it, the only people that are really interested in that is group 1, because the others, they can't follow what he's saying without seeing it.
Yes, I was wondering, is it important that all the class examine all the theme statements? Can you divide them into groups where, one group is examining each other's? And the agreeing
Yeah.
on
What
one,
he's
maybe
trying
you
to
all
do-
look at the...
He's trying to say, okay, hey, we took this, here's this theme statement from an actual RFP that went in.
Well, that's not, and it doesn't have to be that exercise. It could
Well,
be
it could
later
be-
on.
Well,
yeah.
he
So-
wants them to write a theme statement to
On a-
support this paragraph that's coming behind.
Mhm.
Okay, if they throw it up on the screen, then everybody can look at it and say, that's a bunch of garbage. That's not what that said. A better theme statement would be blah. And so you kind of pick it apart and say, well, okay, let's make this one better. So you maybe add a modifier, or you delete a bunch of gobbledygook or something, and now you've got a theme statement that comes right out and says that,
But what you're concerned about is doing that for every single one.
It gets tedious.
Of course it does. And, well, that's why you don't have to do everybody's.
Well, I had one guy, it was a trainer from GD, came in one time, and he watched all this, and he was angry. In fact, I don't know, he complained anyway, that the instructor should personally give everyone feedback on each thing that they did, so
Well, maybe
themes
you
and
could be
action
going
captions.
around while
But you
they're doing it and giving them individual feedback. I
can't
disagree
really
with
very
him.
well. Yeah.
Because, if you can do it, fine, but usually it's
It's real
just
hard.
not
The other thing is,
possible.
it's in a group. Yeah, it's impossible. And the other thing, it's nice to have the other group, because what I try to teach them is I want the group to become self-sufficient.
Yes.
I'm not going to be there later on,
Exactly.
and I want these other people to be able to critique them. So I'll do some
well,
of those.
neither
and
will
let the
all those
group-
other people be there together. They're going to go home to their own individual.
Well, yes,
Organization.
but each time they edit someone else's, that increases their skills for themselves, rather than looking to somebody else
Mhm.
to do it. They're practicing the editing,
Here's it.
which is really good. Did I give you mine? But if you have them exchange, maybe even in exchange with another
Yeah.
group and get feedback, I don't know, not necessarily with one group.
Well,
But-
sometimes that's not, doesn't look too good, because now you're exchanging the bad answer.
Now,
Well, I know, we always talk about what's good about it and what you'd suggest, not, you never rip apart.
when we do storyboards, for example, put up these worksheets, that's exactly what we do, is we put them all up on the board and we rotate one, and they get to critique, and then we walk the walls and they tell us.
Yeah,
talk
and so
about-
they get a lot of practice with that. For giving
they have to
personal
verbalize it
attention
all.
for theme statements, can you, for example, say, look, if you'd like me to take a look at your theme statement, catch me during an activity or during a break, or give it to me this
Yeah.
evening and I'll look at it, but give them a chance and the responsibility to bring it to you. And that way, everyone who wants personal attention can get it, but you're not having everyone.
Yeah.
You're not having to look at everyone's all at once when it's just impossible to do. And I found that works pretty well.
I have to go around and pick them at random and you get different people at different times.
I think though, if you had 4 groups and you gave a group leader well, you may separate the groups from time to time, but if you had a half a dozen of those view graph things that you
That
could
sounds
want
tough.
to
I carry that one.
you carry that and you can say, okay, you guys in your group, you decide what you think would be a good, not necessarily, if you don't completely agree with it, but tell us what you think would be a good.
I have them, yeah. I have them just pick the best and then we compare it with the one that was written in the
Sure.
proposal. Most of the time they write better ones.
Well, as you debrief, the ones that you do debrief as a group, everyone is learning a lot about
Yeah.
each one, and they're beginning to compare their own
right.
to it, so they don't need to go through all of it.
That's
It
right.
does get
That's
repetitive, and if it gets too repetitive and too tedious, they're tuned out anyway.
When I've done RFP-specific ones, where, they're working on, not this one, but their own sections, then at times I've gone around the room and had everybody read theirs. And we get all these people coming in who know it and real interested, because that's the procurement they gotta win. And you get more interest. But
Oh,
doing it
so-
on this ultralight, it's sort of after a while.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you can say, okay, well, we've looked at 5 or 6 here. You could maybe ask, anyone really want to have a group review on this? Anyone really want to have?
Yeah.
Okay, and anyone else who'd like to get some personal attention, bring me yours, I'll be glad to. But rather than having the group go through, anyway, for what it's worth. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, see you next week.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think.
That's enough, huh?
That's enough for today.
Let's just simply, we've talked the overview. If you just want to take your lesson plan and the view graphs for the rest,
Yeah, let's see, that's
and
these.
maybe the handouts that go for the rest. That's it. There aren't that many view
So
graphs.
it's really just these right here.
That's right.
This goes right there.
We've done that one.
And then that one's already that one.
So I think I'd look at, yeah, that and the handouts, so you can see what those things are referred to in
Oh,
here.
there, it's chapter 7 handouts, right?
Right. And not all those. Well, most of them.
Which book is mine? This
You
one?
just grab the book. Probably easier.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But that'd be good.
Okay, and I'll drop in there. I'll probably get up here about 9.
Do you want to look at your tape or just leave it?
Yeah, let me take.
looks like that thing's.
Oh, you didn't stop it. I'll just run it back.